Okay. So before I start, I didn't mean to put the PowerPoint up in straight away. I'm having one of those moments. So we'll leave the picture there rather than not take it away again. Today we go from the days of gorse into the days of heather. This is the exact astrological, astronomy, solar Samhain, you know, midpoint of Scorpio, halfway between autumn equinox and winter solstice. Now, throughout the year, we've been following the trees, and my main focus has been on star law, and I'm going to carry that through to the end until we get to the yew tree. But I am thinking that come next year with birch and a new cycle, my interest is drifting towards herbalism and medicine. But I will complete the whole cycle of star law, and the star law of heather is really quite important and fascinating, I think. So that's mainly what the PowerPoint presentation will be about. But just quickly, some notes about heather itself. Traditionally, it's a wonderful shrub that gives people comfort, especially in the wintertime. So I gave it the keywords of domestic comforts. Now, the reason for that is that heather itself, bearing in mind this time of year, November, heather was used as kindling for fires. It was used as a sweep, as brush, you know, so it was a way of brushing the house and lighting a hearth fire as a kindling, but it was also used for stuffing mattresses. So it literally gave you fire in your hearth, and it gave you a comfortable bed to sleep on. And famously, the Celts made an ale, a beer, out of heather. So it gave you alcohol as well, you know, so all of those things that are going to help you through the cold winter months, a nice fire, a warm bed, and a nice tipple to drink in the evening. So heather kind of has that domestic comfort notion. And like gorse, both gorse and heather give protection during the winter months to lots of small creatures, rabbits and hares and badgers and snakes and hedgehogs and all that. You know, all the little creatures are well sheltered by gorse and heather and protected by the prickly gorse as well. So the Bryatheroum, the traditional Irish word kennings for heather, the Auracept, the Scholar's Primer, has it as heather, and that's 1390 AD. So since 1390, has represented heather, but the word kennings are not about heather. The word kennings are about soil, earth, mud, not the planet Earth, but soil. So the first one of the Bryatheroum is in cold dwellings. That is, you know, cold dwellings or hovels and poorhouses have earthen floors. So the floor of a poorhouse in cold dwellings. Interesting that heather will give you kindling and a mattress. It kind of warms up that cold dwelling. The second word kenning is propagation of plants. Of course, you need soil, compost to grow things, and that's quite interesting with this time of year, as it's a seeding time. You know, the seeds are going into the soil. Now, the third of the Bryatheroum, the third word kenning, is a little bit darker, but quite profound for this time of year and for the position of heather in the ogham. So the third kenning is shroud of a lifeless one. That is a dead body. The shroud over the dead body is the soil being shoveled into the burial plot. You know, it's covering a dead body. It's the shroud of a lifeless body. So, you know, the soil is the floor of a cold house. It's that which seeds grow in, but it's also the final covering of a body when it's buried. You know, all of that is soil. Now, the importance with that kind of acknowledgement of death, if you like, is with Samhain, there is the death of the old, of course, and the beginning of a Celtic New Year, and the seeds are going into the ground. But with the mystery teaching of this quarter of the year, this Akma, is all about the wild hunt. And the wild hunt is what's really called in mythology a psychopomp. A psychopomp is any god or goddess or animal that leads the soul to the spirit world. You know, the psychopomp is the guiding spirit to the next world. So that's what the wild hunt plays out in Celtic mythology. It's the gathering of souls and taking the souls onwards to the spirit world. And it finishes with you and rebirth at winter solstice. So there's the rebirth after the death. But this is very much Scorpio being the death sign of the zodiac. Now, Heather goes from 15 degrees Scorpio today to the 3rd degree of Sagittarius. So it's the cusp between Scorpio and Sagittarius. Now, traditionally in mystery school zodiac teachings, the claws of the scorpion are facing Libra. The scales of Libra are often described as being made from the claws of the scorpion, because the scorpion constellation is so huge, the stars of Libra, the scales are made from it. That means the sting of the scorpion is facing Sagittarius. As a friend of mine said, you know, the sun might have got through Scorpio and you're into the days of Sagittarius, but Scorpio can still get you with its sting. You know, you have to get a few days into Sagittarius before you're safe from the scorpion sting. But that's Heather. You know, Heather is 15 degrees Scorpio into 3 days Sagittarius. So it's got that scorpionic sting. Now that the sting of the scorpion strikes Sagittarius, it strikes the centaur. And that's a famous centaur in Greek mythology called Chiron, who's the wounded centaur and a leader of heroes going into mystery traditions and a great healer. So as much as Heather is about death because of the scorpionic sting thing, there's a whole load of healing lore to do with the star lore around Heather, and another constellation called, and I'm never sure if I pronounce it properly, Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. Okay, I'll come to that further on. So in Ogham lore, in tree lore, Heather eventually will lead us to the days of Aspen. And Aspen is the spirit world, the spirit realm. It's the leaves whisper, and it's like the whispering of spirits. And every twig of the aspen tree has a 5-pointed star running through it, you know. But more intriguingly is in Ireland, there was such a thing as an aspen rod, and it was called a fey. It's just spelled F-E, fey, like fairy, but it doesn't mean fairy. So the aspen rod, the fey, was a thing of taboo. People didn't like to go near it because it had a specific purpose, and its one specific purpose was measuring out dead bodies for burial. So it's interesting that you've got Heather saying shroud of a lifeless one, you know, and the aspen tree is also for measuring out the bodies for burial and the soil being put on top. both of these trees, you know, heather and aspen, they are talking about a death period before the rebirth at winter solstice, you know, and it's perfect really for the wild hunt, because the wild hunt is going to play the role of psychopomp, which is leading spirits to the spirit world. And then for the mystery traditions, all of the initiates going through an initiation, they're going into the spirit world to perceive and communicate and gain wisdom from the spirits of the spirit world, you know. So all of that's there with the heather and its death moment, and the aspen trees as the spirit world itself. Now, that'll bring me on to this PowerPoint thing. So some of you might be familiar with this iconography, but I'll go over it quickly because it helps explain the wild hunt and the winter hunter. So this is a famous statue from Gaul, France, and it dates to the 4th century, so about 300 AD, a long time ago. And it's Canunus with his antlers on his head. On one side of him is the Roman god Mercury, and on the other side is Apollo. Now, Apollo plays a part with the days of heather. But the important thing with this icon is below Canunus, there's a little red bull and a little white stag. I've coloured them that way. The original statue is just stone. It doesn't have any colouring at all. But I want to draw your attention to the stag and the bull. So the theory is that these two creatures represent the two halves of the year. Now, the bull represents the summer months, going from Beltane to Samhain. Okay, so those summer months when there's more daylight than there is darkness. Now, Beltane happens during the sign of Taurus the bull. You know, it's the opposite of Samhain and Scorpio. So Taurus the bull. Now, the bull is a domesticated animal. It's a farming agricultural animal. You use it to plow your fields. It was the tractor of the old days. So it's the domesticated creature that helps you do farming and grow food and all the rest of it. The stag, on the opposite hand, is completely different. The stag is wild, it's not domesticated, and it runs free. And it represents the winter because the winter time was the time of the hunt for a number of reasons. The first reason is all of the farming is finished and the harvest has been brought in. You don't want to go hunting over your crop, you know, so the growing time isn't the hunting time. The other reason for hunting in the winter is there's no food to grow until the following summer, you know, so the only food you can harvest in the winter time is meat, you know, so hunting is a winter activity, a way of feeding the tribe. And on top of that, with the forests, all of the deciduous trees have dropped their leaves. So it's much easier to see your prey and hunt it, you know, whereas in the summer, you don't want to go hunting over crop and wheat and fields of food. And it's hard to go hunting in the forest because there's so much foliage, you can't see very far, you know. So anyway, various logical reasons as to why the bull represents the summertime and the stag represents the winter time. Now, this is on an icon from Gaul in the 3rd century, but it's even older than that. It's on the Gundestrup cauldron, which could be as old as 1st century BC. So 400 years before the Gallic icon. So Canunus again, and by him there's a stag, and behind the stag there's the bull. The stag and bull are there as a kind of symbols that belong to Canunus almost, you know. And of course, if you had like Oak King and Holly King or Winter King and Summer King, the summer king would wear bull's horns, and the winter king would wear stag's antlers. So here, Canunus is obviously related to the stag. He's related to the winter more than he is the summer. And elsewhere on the Gundestrup cauldron, there are figures with bull's horns on their helmets. So they're like summer king figures. Now, that's why on the Owen Grove poster, I've put a white stag and a red bull. It's just a, you know, you could put traditional Celtic representations of winter and summer, if you like. Now, we're going to go into star lore now, but I guess the main thing I'm saying first is just that the year simplistically is divided into two, summer months and winter months. So that's going to relate to the stars that I'm going to show you now. So I'll talk slowly with this, give you time to look at it. The pale blue streak running through the dark blue is the Milky Way, and the dark blue is the rest of the night sky as seen from the northern hemisphere. So people living in Australia or New Zealand, they don't have these stars, but these are the stars of the Celts and the Northern Europeans. Now, at the top of the picture, there's a triangle, and it's made of three bright stars. One's in Lyra, one's in Cygnus, and one's in Aquila. Now, Aquila is the eagle, Cygnus is the swan, and Lyra means harp, but it was also seen as a small bird. One of its other names is the falling vulture. So in Somerset, there's a church where there's a carving of three birds in a tree, and also a centaur and a lion and a ram. And this is the three fire signs of the zodiac and the three birds in the tree. This triangle at the top is the three birds. It's called the summer triangle, or the three birds. And in Welsh mythology, they're the three birds of Rhiannon. And that's mentioned in a couple of stories in the Mabinogion. So when the three birds of Rhiannon are mentioned, it's the summertime, because it's the summer triangle. Those three constellations are in the night sky during the summertime, you know, so it belongs to the months of the bull. Now, at the bottom of the picture, there's a hexagon shape. So it's called the winter hexagon. And that's formed by 6 bright stars that make this hexagon shape around the Milky Way. And like the triangle at the top, it's on the Milky Way. So this is Milky Way star patterns, and the Milky Way itself was seen as the path of spirits. You know, it's the spirit path. When we die, we follow the spirit path, the Milky Way. So the hexagon at the bottom are the winter stars, which is where we're at now, you know, for the 6 months of winter. And the main constellations for that are what we now call Orion, the hunter, and Canis Major, the great hound. And there's also Canis Minor, the little hound, and Gemini and Auriga and Taurus, the bull, right? But the simple symbolism of the wintertime is the hunter and his hound, Orion and Canis Major. So the hunter and hound hunting in the wintertime, and the three birds in the sky in the summertime. Now, what I want to draw your attention to is this constellation between them. So the summer stars come and go, the winter stars come and go, but that constellation between them is in the night sky all year round. She is ever present. Now, it's the constellation of Cassiopeia, okay, which in Egyptian lore was seen as the throne of Isis, and with Cassiopeia, it's a throne that she is chained to. But for the Celts, they turned it on its side. So if you imagine turning the picture clockwise a bit, the constellation of Cassiopeia becomes a W shape. Okay, and that's how the Celts seem to have seen it. And that W shape was the breasts of the great mother, the mother goddess, you know, as the heavenly boobies. And the Milky Way was literally seen as the milk coming from the heavenly boobies, you know. Now, the Celts had a really interesting way of representing it. I'll show you in a minute. It's on the Gundestrup cauldron, but it's also on a plaque found in Bath in England at Aqua Sulis. There's 3 mother goddesses, and they're making a W shape for the mother goddess with their arms. And I'll step back a bit. If you look at my little window, they do this with their arms, and it makes this W shape. Now that's also on the Gundestrup cauldron. So this figure on the outer plates of the cauldron, she is doing the W shape with her arms, which I said is on other iconography for the Celtic people. So she is actually representing the mother goddess between the summer stars and the winter stars. Now, what I'm about to show you is amazing. It's stunning. And so when the 3 birds are in the night sky, the hunter and hound are below the horizon. They can't be seen. And equally, when the hunter and hound are in the night sky, the 3 birds are below the horizon. They can't be seen. So the next panel shows you this lady, but she has lifted one of her arms up, so she's no longer making the W shape. And in her upraised arm, she's holding a little bird, and there's 2 big birds, one on either side of her head. So when the 3 birds are in the sky, the hunter and hound are below the horizon, and just below her breasts, there's an upside down dog and an upside down man, you know. So that's your kind of, just like the stag and the bull, it's a division of the year. There's the summer months with the 3 birds and the winter months of the hound and hunter. So this panel from the Gundestrup cauldron is saying summertime, because it's the 3 birds of the summer months, you know, and the goddess is between the 2, you know, she's between them, she's ever present. Looking at this again then, so you've got Cernunnos and you've got the stag and the bull, but look how close the stag is. The antlers of the stag and Cernunnos are making the same W shape of Cassiopeia. You know, it's like in some way they're honoring the great goddess at the center of the night sky. And does it also mean that at this time of year, he's consort to her, you know, in some way, maybe? Just ideas. But further on, I don't think there's anything accidental on the Gundestrup cauldron, so that the antlers are actually making a W, I would say, is quite deliberate. Now, coming back to now then, this cusp today between gorse and heather, as much as it's all happening in Scorpio and Samhain, there are other constellations in the night sky too. And corresponding with this exact moment in the night sky are 2 secondary constellations. One of them is called Corona Borealis, the northern crown, and the other one is called Serpent's Caput, or the serpent's head. So one constellation represents a circle of stars, the northern crown, and the other the head of a serpent, for this exact moment in time. Now look at the Gundestrup cauldron again. So he's got the ring in one hand and the serpent head in another. So on the one hand, it's Cernunnos with the stag and the bull. It's also Cernunnos and the stag making the W shape of the great mother goddess. But also this winter hunter is holding a ring and a serpent's head. This is right now, Samhain. That's the star law of Samhain, you know? So it's almost like he's holding the stellar trophies of his time of year, you know, this herald of, gosh, you know, the wild hunt, so the winter hunter. amazingly too, I was really disappointed at first when Oak and Holly corresponded with Beltane, because although Oak King and Holly King have a battle at Beltane, I kind of wanted Holly to be in the wintertime. I wanted the Holly King to be in the wintertime. But here's the magic, you know, tomorrow is full moon, and the full moon is always opposite wherever the sun is. So we've got the winter hunter right now with Corona Borealis and the serpent's head, and tomorrow's full moon is in Holly. So it's the Holly King's full moon as well. So this is a real kind of winter king, wild hunter trigger moment, if you like. Samhain is launching that straight away with a full moon in Holly. Now, it gets even more mind-blowing, and then this is new to me too, these kind of realizations, but it's following on from contemplations of the Ogham holding mystery school teachings. So simplistically, in the night sky there were two moments that were very special to the ancient world, and they were called stargates moments. And it was seen at those two specific moments in time, souls entered into the spirit worlds. They entered into the Milky Way at these two stargates. Now, looking at this diagram, so that the kind of disc that looks like an oval disc is the sun's path. It's called the ecliptic. So that, in a way, it's a zodiac. And the stars going obliquely at an angle to it is the Milky Way, as seen from Earth, you know. So there's two places where the Milky Way crosses the ecliptic. It kind of does that with my arms, like one arm is the ecliptic and then the Milky Way crosses it, and that kind of St. Andrew's cross or Saltire cross are those two places. So in this picture where it says Aldebaran, that's the brightest star of Taurus. So there's a stargate between Taurus and Gemini. Okay, we're at the other stargate right now. On the right where it says Antares, that's the Scorpio Sagittarius stargate moment. So there's only these 2 points of the year where the sun's ecliptic joins the Milky Way for souls to jump off the zodiac belt into the Milky Way spirit world, if you like. Now, something amazing happens with the constellation of the winter hexagon, the winter hunter. So here's a close-up of the hexagon. Okay, so what we call Orion the hunter, you can just see as the hunter and hound. You could call it Gwyn ap Neath or Herne the hunter or Cernunnos. It doesn't matter. It's the winter hunter, okay, and his hound. Now, if you go up towards the right-hand side, it actually says Taurus in white writing, and behind Taurus there's a dash, there's a curve of a circle of dashes. Now, those dashes are the sun's ecliptic, okay? So that's the zodiac circle. Taurus goes to Gemini and onwards. But the pale blue bit is the Milky Way. Now, if you look at the Orion figure, it's a little bit like he's shooting a bow and arrow. So if you look at his upraised arm, it forks like to two long fingers, and it almost touches the ecliptic. So it's like, and there's a guy called Peter Knight wrote a book about the CERN Abbas giant, and he explores all this stuff. So it's almost as if Orion is pointing to the stargate of where the Milky Way crosses the ecliptic. Now think about that slowly for a moment. So this is the winter hunter pointing to the stargate, and this is all wrapped up with the wild hunt and the role of psychopomp leading souls to the next world. That the winter hunter is literally pointing to where we're all going, you know. And the most amazing thing is, that only dawned on me recently, is that when we get to the days of Aspen, we're into the sign of Sagittarius, and the very center of our galaxy is in Sagittarius. You know, so in the days of Heather, you've got the hunter pointing to the Stargate. And in the days of Aspen, the spirit world would be aligning with galactic center always. And so it's like the star realm. And the fascinating thing, like I said, with Aspen, which is where Heather is leading, is every single twig of Aspen has stars running through it. So it's like the tree of the stars, if you like. You know, if souls after death are going to the spirit world and the star world, the aspen trees are holding that. So with the wild hunt, we're chasing and gathering souls and making our way to the spirit world and the aspen trees. And then there will be rebirth at the end with the yew tree, you know, and the return of the sun during the winter solstice governed by yew. So there you have it. I'll stop recording and we can have a chat about some of those ideas, and you can put your microphones back on. So I'll just stop recording.